When we talk about World War One, the really big players that come to mind, maybe the Ottoman Empire isn't always like number one on the list,
That's true for a lot of people.
but actually their decision to, well, jump into the fray, it really threw a major wrench in the works for the Allies.
It really did. A huge one.
So for this deep dive, we're going to try and unpack exactly how the Ottoman Empire joining World War One changed the whole dynamic, how the fighting itself changed.
Mhm. And our mission today is like super focused.
Hmm.
Just looking at how the Ottoman Empire deciding to go with the Central Powers wasn't just some minor detail, it was a key turning point. Reshaped the battlefield.
Okay, the Ottomans joined WWI. Sounds straightforward enough,
Mhm.
but to really get the impact, I think we need to get a handle on some of the key ideas first. Like, who are the Ottoman Turks? We hear Ottoman Empire all the time.
Right. So imagine this really powerful empire. It lasted for centuries, like a very long time, ruled by Turkish people.
Okay.
And at its peak, I mean, it controlled this huge stretch of land, Middle East, North Africa, parts of Southeast Europe. It was vast.
Wow.
So the Ottoman Turks, they're the people at the heart of this massive, influential empire, a major player for ages.
Okay, that makes sense. But by the time World War One is starting, like early 1900s, were they still that dominant, that same huge force?
That's a really crucial point. And our curriculum material, it actually mentions this. There's an earlier part, Unit 3, Goal 4, about the decline of the Ottomans.
Huh.
So yeah, by the early 20th century, the empire was, well, it was facing some serious internal problems. Plus, a lot of pressure from European powers.
So kind of weakening already.
Exactly. Think of it like a grand old building, maybe,
Yeah.
starting to show its age, facing challenges from everywhere. And knowing this decline, this context, it's really important for understanding, why they made the choices they did leading up to the war.
Got it. That context helps a lot. Now, another name that always comes up here is Constantinople. What was so important about that city,
Yeah.
especially for the Ottomans and WWI?
Constantinople, which, today is Istanbul. It was the absolute heart, the capital of the Ottoman Empire for centuries.
The capital.
And its location, geographically, just incredibly critical. Picture it sitting right where Europe and Asia meet.
The crossroads.
Exactly. And controlling these narrow waterways that connect the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. So it wasn't just a big, important city. It was a strategic linchpin for trade, for military access, everything. Whoever held Constantinople held a major key.
A strategic choke point, basically. That makes total sense. Okay, so related to that, the Dardanelles. What are they, and why were they so important during the war?
Okay, so the Dardanelles, they're this narrow, straight, like a channel of water, really narrow, but incredibly strategic. It connects the Aegean Sea to the Sea of Marmara.
Which then leads to the Black Sea.
Which then leads to the Black Sea, exactly. Now, why was this such a hot spot in World War I? Well, think about Russia.
Okay, Allied power.
Right, a major ally of Britain and France. Russia relied heavily on getting ships through the Dardanelles. For trade, yes, but also for their navy to get out into the Mediterranean and connect with the other allies.
Ah, okay.
So controlling that little strip of water, it was absolutely vital for keeping Russia supplied, connected. Huge deal.
I see. So if the Ottomans controlled the Dardanelles and they joined the other side?
Then they could effectively blockade Russia from the south.
Yeah.
Cut off a major allied power. That's a massive strategic implication right there.
Wow, okay. That really clicks. Now that brings us to Gallipoli. We hear about the Gallipoli campaign all the time with World War I. Where is it, and why was there this huge battle there?
Right, Gallipoli. It's a peninsula, sort of like a finger of land, right on the western side of the Dardanelles Strait.
Okay, right next to it.
Exactly. And the Gallipoli campaign, this was 1915, 1916. It was this massive military operation launched by the Allies, primarily British and French, but also famously Australian and New Zealand troops, the ANZ Axis.
What were they trying to do?
Their main goal was, well, pretty ambitious. Force their way through the Dardanelles Strait, capture Constantinople, and basically knock the Ottoman Empire right out of the war.
Knock them out completely.
That was the hope. And as a bonus, open up that supply line to Russia we just talked about.
Right. But if I remember my history, Gallipoli didn't exactly go to plan for the Allies. It's usually talked about as, well, a disaster.
That's a very accurate way to put it, yeah. The Gallipoli campaign was a significant failure, a devastating failure, really, for the Allies.
Why? What happened?
They ran into incredibly fierce resistance from the Ottoman soldiers. I mean, they
Hmm.
were defending their homeland right on the doorstep of their capital. The terrain was brutal, too.
Mm.
The whole campaign just dragged on for months and months. Terrible conditions, and the casualties, especially for the Allies, were just enormous, huge losses.
So this really shows the direct impact of the Ottomans joining the war.
Absolutely. It's a really stark example. The Ottoman entry immediately created the situation where the Allies felt they had to launch this huge, costly campaign. It tied up vast amounts of their resources, ships, men,
For months.
for months, and ultimately it achieved none of its main strategic goals. It really hammered home the cost of taking on the Ottoman forces on their own turf.
Okay, so the Ottomans joined the Central Powers. That directly leads to this major Allied attack on the Dardanelles at Gallipoli, which fails badly. That paints a very clear picture of how their involvement shifted the fighting.
Definitely.
Now, there are other things, other names and terms that often come up when we talk about this whole period. You know, the Armenians, the Balfour Declaration, T.E. Lawrence, the Arab Revolt. How do those fit in with the Ottomans joining the war based on, our source material here?
Right. And this is actually a really important point to clarify for this deep dive. While all of those things you mentioned, the Armenians, Balfour Declaration, Lawrence of Arabia, the Arab Revolt, they are absolutely significant historical topics. And they do involve the Ottoman Empire around the time of World War I.
Okay.
But the specific source we're using today, this curriculum unit focused only on the Ottomans joined WWI, it actually doesn't go into detail on those particular aspects.
Okay, so the curriculum unit itself doesn't cover them in this section.
Exactly. So based only on the material we have for this specific deep dive, we can't really explore those connections properly. They're sort of outside the scope of this particular source's focus.
Gotcha. That's important then. We need to stick to what this unit tells us.
Precisely. The broader history is, of course, incredibly complex and includes all that.
Uh,
But our goal today, using the source, is to understand that initial direct impact of the Ottoman entry.
right.
And what this source does emphasize is the strategic geography, the Dardanelles, and the immediate military reaction, which is Gallipoli.
Okay, fair enough. So staying focused on our mission, how the Ottoman entry changed the fighting of World War I, according to the source material. Based on what we have covered, what's the main takeaway? What's the core message here?
I think the core message is that the Ottoman decision to side with the Central Powers wasn't just, another country joining. It fundamentally reshaped the war.
How so?
Well, firstly, boom, it opened up a completely new front, the Middle Eastern front.
Right, a whole new area of conflict.
Exactly. And this immediately forced the Allies, Britain, France, to divert soldiers, ships, supplies, everything away from the Western Front in Europe, which was already incredibly intense.
They had to split their focus.
They had to. They now had this major new theater of operations to worry about.
And that diversion of resources, that directly led to things like the Gallipoli campaign.
Precisely. The Allies saw the strategic threat, but also maybe an opportunity. Control those straits, knock out the Ottomans, help Russia. It seemed crucial. So Gallipoli was that direct military response to this new strategic reality created when the Ottomans joined the war. And like we said, its failure had really significant negative consequences for the Allied war effort. It cost them dearly.
So a new front opens up.
Yeah.
A massive campaign is launched to deal with it. It fails, costing the Allies huge amounts of men and material. It definitely sounds like the Ottoman involvement, well, it really complicated things for the Allies, probably made the war longer, harder.
Absolutely. You can't underestimate the impact of their geography.
Yeah.
Controlling those straits, controlling that landmass connecting Europe and Asia. It suddenly became this critical factor in the whole war's strategic calculation.
Yeah.
It forced the Allies into these incredibly expensive campaigns like Gallipoli, which, ultimately failed. It shifted resources, shifted focus in ways that just wouldn't have happened if the Ottomans had stayed neutral.
It really is quite eye-opening how one decision by this empire that was supposedly in decline could ripple outwards and just dramatically alter the course of this enormous global war. And even though, like you said, our source here doesn't dive into every single consequence in the Middle East,
No, it doesn't.
just focusing on the Dardanelles and Gallipoli gives a really clear, concrete example of how the fighting changed. You can really see the difference.
Exactly right. While the bigger picture is, bigger, this specific curriculum unit gives us a really focused, accessible look at that initial and incredibly important shift. The immediate strategic problems, the direct military responses it caused, it makes that impact very clear.
Okay, cool. So just to make sure we really got this locked down, maybe we can run through a few self-assessment questions just based on what we've explored here today about how the Ottoman involvement changed things.
Yeah, sounds like a good plan. Let's solidify it. Okay, first question. What was the primary strategic importance of the Ottoman Empire's location once they actually joined World War One?
Okay. Their location was key because they sat right on those vital waterways, especially the Dardanelles. Control that, and you control access between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea.
Good. And why was that control so important for the war?
Because it was the main supply route to Russia, one of the major Allied powers. So the Ottomans joining the Central Powers meant they could, like, block that route.
Block the route. Right. Okay, second question then. How did that Ottoman control of the Dardanelles directly affect the Allied powers? What was the impact on them?
Well, it choked off their supply line to Russia, pretty much. Made it really hard to get them weapons, ammunition, other goods, and it also trapped Russia's Black Sea Fleet, limited Allied naval options in that whole region. It was a big strategic headache.
A major obstacle.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, third question. What was the main objective, the goal of the Gallipoli campaign, and why do we remember it as such a significant event?
The goal was basically to break through the Dardanelles, capture the Ottoman capital, Constantinople, and knock the Ottomans out of the war, and also open that sea lane to Russia.
And why significant?
It's significant because it was this huge, ambitious Allied attempt to deal with the Ottomans joining the war, but it failed spectacularly. Resulted in massive casualties for the Allies and showed, I guess, how tough the Ottomans could be and how vital that location was.
Well put. Shows the cost of that new front. Okay, final question. Based purely on the information from this curriculum unit we've discussed, can you point to one key way the actual fighting of World War I was different after the Ottomans joined compared to before?
Yeah, definitely. The fighting physically expanded. A whole new major front opened up in the Middle East. This forced the Allies to commit huge numbers of troops and resources there, resources that could have been used elsewhere, like in France.
Yeah.
So it changed the map of the war and where the fighting happened.
Excellent. That nails it. You've clearly grasped the core ways the Ottoman decision reshaped the fighting, at least as presented in this specific source.
Yeah, this deep dive into just this one goal, Unit 4, Goal 3, it's really highlighted something crucial about World War I that maybe doesn't always get the main spotlight. It's a really powerful reminder, isn't it? How the choices of, well, maybe powers that seemed secondary at the time could have these massive, truly global consequences in a conflict like that.
It absolutely is. And, it kind of leaves you thinking, given that the Ottoman Empire was facing that internal decline we mentioned, what other factors, besides just pure strategy, might have pushed them towards the Central Powers? And then how did losing the war ultimately affect that decline? Did it speed it up, change it?
Yeah. More questions.
Perhaps something interesting to think about, or maybe explore in another deep dive down the road.